She's almost 6 feet tall. She's left-handed, and she's really into volleyball. And she's really skinny. She looks like olive oil from Popeye.
Oh yeah.
So it's a
You know who's a
matter
big
of.
you know who's a big player you should talk to? Do you know the Heimbauers? Gabby Heimbauer?
That name sounds familiar.
She's like a top USA volleyball player. I think she's going to she wanted to do both basketball and volleyball, but she went to Manhasset. She's from Manhasset.
Yeah,
They
that
have
name's very familiar.
She was the top ranked basketball player, and Kendall used to train with her, but then she tracked volleyball. And they were kind of trying to decide which, but they know that volleyball didn't give scholarship money as much as basketball. They tried to jump back to basketball, but she tore her ACL. But they were right in Manhasset, and he just did the whole recruiting with volleyball. You should talk to him. I don't know his name, but it's Gabby Heimbauer. They have 4 kids. He's a doctor. They live in Manhasset.
She doesn't go to Manhasset though. She must go to like private school.
No, she was in public. I think public.
Because my daughter played varsity for Manhasset last year, and that name doesn't sound familiar. There was no Heimbauer on her team.
Maybe Manhasset. Maybe it's one. Maybe it's I can think what a different town. What are the other M towns in the North Shore? Maybe not Manhasset. I'll Google her. Just Google it in 10 seconds. You'll pull her right up. She's all over Huddle. She was a basketball player, but she's big volleyball, like a top in the country.
Yeah, I'm gonna look her up.
Yeah, I'll get you her name. Anyway, I see everybody's there.
Hey team, what's going on? How's everyone doing?
Talking sports.
Yeah.
Leslie, congratulations on your daughter's graduation.
Thank you. That'll be you in 18 years.
Holy moly, can't even. So much drama. So anyway, I wanted to get the team together. I sent kind of a light agenda. I think Dania is going to be joining us, but I think we'll kind of get started and she can kind of catch up if we need to. I apologize. My German Shepherd is very like right here today. So for face Zoom, like her name's Whitney. So wanted to kind of start to kind of brainstorm with the team what we're looking to do as a group and what we're looking to accomplish. And then kind of start to set some goals for us as a group, just to kind of start to get the ball rolling. I'm really bad at using cheesy sports analogies, so I apologize. I'm going to mix metaphors. It's bad. Too much time. But anyway, just kind of wanted to start to throw out the framework of what this group is trying to accomplish. And Greg, by all means, cut me off if I misspeak about what we're getting into. But just wanted to kind of reiterate where our goals are, what our next steps are, and the time frame in which we kind of want to accomplish. So by all means, if something doesn't make sense, I'm not offended, cut me off. So I think we can just kind of start to get together and divide out and conquer like who's tackling what. But this is the college marketing and development team. And the thought process is that we would be tackling the college market, both kind of D1, D2, D3, and then also club. And our goal here is trying to get a better understanding of how these guys are functioning. And hey, Dania.
Hi, can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay, great.
Drive safely, don't drive off the road.
Yeah, I know I won't. I'm probably going to turn my video off if you don't mind.
No, we're not offended.
Okay, great.
And just real quickly, the goal of this group is just to kind of wanted to get everyone together and start to frame out what our goals are and start to kind of divide and conquer, based on connections and networks and skill sets, who everyone's kind of tackling. So I threw a really loose agenda together for the meeting. And kind of like what I started to say was, there's kind of 2 focuses to college. There's the kids that are playing, D1, let's say, and then there's club organizations. And quite frankly, we speak really well to both groups. So I think that that's something that's really important to consider when you're thinking about your college network and your college contacts is the people that oversee the club side and the intramural side are as equally, if not more important to us. Because quite frankly, a lot of the solutions that we'll be providing might really speak to them. So don't forget to kind of go that avenue when you're having these conversations. I know a lot of us played college sports at a pretty high level. So I think sometimes it's easy to get caught up in that. the volume of kids that are playing intramural and club sports is huge. So that's a really, really good market for us, and one that we just want to make sure that we don't forget about when we're having this conversation. My apologies, I need my morning coffee. So I kind of broke out some kind of basic questions. And again, Greg, chime on in if I'm missing something. But the thoughts with the kids that are kind of, let's say, D1, we're trying to kind of get an understanding of, and again, this is where start to think about your network and who you know that could help us answer these questions. What do coaches need? What tools are they currently using and lacking that would make their jobs easier? So something that they may come back to you with a piece of feedback is, we're using this tool, but it's missing this. And that would be something really helpful. I think that, I'll throw out an example of, like, we use TeamSnap a lot for like coordinating kids schedules and adult league schedules and stuff like that. And that app is like lacking in a lot of different ways. Like, that piece of feedback to a coach that says, like, this is what we're using for, let's say, recruiting, and it really is missing like these functionalities that would help us. And with that, Greg had kind of dovetailed into some really interesting comments about video. And I think that part of it is because we obviously have the technology on the video side, that we're going to be leaps and bounds above a lot of people with those capabilities. Are there video capabilities that these guys need in order to measure up a recruit? Verify a recruit? Is there video that these guys need and technology that these guys need to verify? I think the example he uses, like, is this kid really throwing a 95-mile-an-hour fastball? So kind of thinking along those lines, both the recruiting and then actually once the kid's in the school, like, what are the tools that they're using to communicate with each other? I go back to one of the greatest, at least Patterson stories of all time, is that my brother never set up his phone line in college when phones were still being used. And he missed his drug test because he didn't know about it. Called my parents, your son's on drugs. It was bad. So I think that, again, start to think about the process from start to finish. Start to think about the sophomore that's getting recruited in high school and what tools the parents are using and the coaches are using to recruit them, and take that kid and move that kid all the way to actually signing up and being a D1 athlete and using the facilities and using the gym and using the ice, whatever those thoughts are. So those are kind of very, very broad strokes, but different avenues that, as you're having conversations with your network, start to kind of assess their pain points, and if they give you one, kind of delve in that direction. Greg, is that pretty accurate? Wait, you're muted.
Okay, so when we're talking, I'm figuring probably 6 months down the road to 9 months, we'll have an offering that we can offer high schools and colleges that'll help them do their games and their competitions. And it'll come with software, the service that allows them to stream real time as well as on demand, and the cameras and everything else. So we can actually say, for $10,000, you got a package that'll last you for the next few years, and I'll give you 6 months free of streaming. And then after that, they'll pay whatever per month to stream, but that'll give them all the capabilities they need to run with that. So that's gonna be sort of cool, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. You're just talking about how we're gonna do the recruiting side. And that's also really, it can be very easily, video can be taken and made into a tool for recruiting.
And I don't think you're getting ahead of yourself, because again, I think that we're just trying to, like, the point of what our group is getting to right now is trying to land the meeting. So I think once we land the meeting, mm-hmm. the appropriate people can dovetail into whatever, but we want to kind of tease them enough and have enough information that they're at least interested in kind of talking to us. So that's really, step one, like, it's kind of, crawl before you walk, before you run. Step one is, we all need to kind of delve into our networks and see who we know that is a decision maker at schools. And that's really important. And then I think the next step is securing the meeting. And then from the securing the meeting to having the meeting, it's really brainstorming with this group, and Greg really in particular, about trying to anticipate what they may say and making sure that we have somewhat prepared answers. It's totally okay to also say, hey, I don't know and I need to go back to it. But Greg, I don't think we're getting ahead of ourselves. I mean, I think that's something we're going to be able to offer up soon.
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's important to remember these first calls and conversations are really fact-finding.
Mhm.
And what we can say is that we're going to build around their needs. We're in the middle of building. That's the most important thing we can say. It's like no one said that to anybody before.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, we think we know what you need, but we want to make sure that you are taken care of. The answer, the key to that is then after that you say, if we do this, will you sign up with us? And you want to get them to say yeah. And that way you have an immediate in when we have everything ready to go in 3 months.
Awesome. Dania, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if we're in the process of fact finding and trying to find out what these entities need, whether it's college coaches, high school players, parents. If I have a network of college coaches, I think there are about 60 of them, and we're all on this chat group where we communicate about different things in the coaching world. If we can put together a questionnaire.
Yep.
I can get that questionnaire to them and have them give us the feedback through that questionnaire. There are so many things out there. I mean, there are so many things out there that our coaches are using. GroupMe to chat with their players. There's Google Docs that Google calendars that they share with their players. There's recruiting software. There's recruiting sites where you could recruiting services where they go out and watch the kid and they give you the feedback. But I think what's good is with coaches having less access to recruits, we have to bridge that gap. And it's due to the NCAA regulations. They're really, really cutting back on the amount of contact we have with the kids. And what's happening is because of the lack of great contact and getting to know recruits are signing earlier, going to these schools, finding out they don't like it, they don't like the coach, they don't like the team, and then the recruits they transfer. The transfer rate in college basketball is so high right now.
That's so interesting.
That's right. There's a huge portal because they all come in early and it passes with communication. Yeah.
So the contact, the communication, the getting to know piece is getting watered down. And I know for a fact these coaches are going to say that if we can find a way that we can just help cultivate that relationship between a recruit and a coach and a recruit and a program, we have something very, very special. But that questionnaire, I can get that questionnaire to all. I think it's like 60 coaches on our GroupMe chat. They'll we do a lot for each other, so I'm sure they would love to give the feedback that we're going to need to find out what they need from UV Sports.
That's really helpful, Dania, and I think that you kind of touched on like almost two things right there. One, obviously, we'll put together a group. You're on it, so sorry to actually develop the questionnaire. Sorry, sometimes when you have a great idea, it means you have to do it. But I think that maybe you, Leslie, and Greg can work on actually developing the questions, and obviously you guys can divide it out. Like even if you guys want to just grab a Zoom and like somebody could just be the note taker and somebody could just spout out the questions and then you can shorten it to Dania, what you think would be an appropriate length. I would assume the goal of sending that out would try and be as many responses as we can. So let's not make it too long, but let's make sure we really target the right questions. But I think the other thing that you said that's really interesting, that again, I think is something that UB Sports solves a lot of problems, is you were just mentioning, and again, I use GroupMe for my old lady softball team. We use Google Calendars. Like we're all talking about these other multiple platforms. Like, wouldn't it be so great if these guys were able to use one platform?
That's right. That's the competitive advantage, is that instead of being this fraction and kind of way of approaching everything, and I think that's exactly the competitive advantage that we offer. It'd be one-stop shopping. Everybody could go to one place. And it'll be all very streamlined because these guys are busy and it's a lot going on and not everybody uses the apps. I just talked to, because I was thinking about talking to you guys, I just talked to someone I know who's the assistant recruiter for Princeton Crew. And
It's a
and
whole nother world.
well, there's a whole nother world. I mean, I know like about a lot of the Ivy coaches just because of my
Yeah.
whatever my little network. But beyond Ivy, that's a whole like a subset of Division One, right? Because it's unique. And but what he was saying is he couldn't think of any way that something like this could help him. And I thought, huh. You know, and I said, well, what about like how do you show? You know, it's not like a basketball game, like a regatta. You only see the last few minutes. So how do you tape a whole regatta? You know, whatever. But he was saying that they live stream. I mean, they have deep pockets too. It's Princeton. They live stream their events. They're live streamed on like their own little alumni, you know, site. That wouldn't help them serve anything. I said, what do you use? And he's forced by Princeton to use ARMS as a recruiting. They force them to use that, which is a recruiting software.
Yep.
So I don't know. And he said he can't speak for other Ivies. You know, but I said, well, what would make your life easier? You know, and I said, how about if it's all in one place? He's like, and I said, well, how do you find a kid? How about recruiting? Wouldn't it be nice if you go somewhere? And he said, well, our bar is different. I said, I know your bar is different because you have academic bars, right? The thing he said that his pain points, like unique to Ivy, that he thought that would love to be addressed, or something that maybe we can't, or maybe we can, but you can't really change that that you know league where they can't give financial aid until July 1st. So he gave me an example. Like there's a kid that committed to Princeton verbally, and the coach of Duke went to Princeton and enrolled. And so the coach of Duke, to poach that kid, says, okay, I'll give you 4 out of Duke. Just tell me by July 1st. It's not a coincidence because July 1st is when the Ivies can give that financial aid assessment. So that's why he put his kid. He's up against people with deeper pockets. His pain point is about like getting the kid vetted, telling the kid how much financial aid they're going to get because it's about money at Ivy League schools. And those are his real pain points. It's not like live streaming a game. So you got to think of it. There are subsets within a subset. Like, so the Ivy League is a subset within Division One. So not all schools are going to have the same thing. And they have a lot of money. Maybe a Division III school has like no money and they want someone to live stream their games. You know, it's like a totally different, they're all different variations under like the same, you know, umbrella of college athletics. But I couldn't even pull out of him how we could help him. I'm like, well, how do you find these guys? Do you have to search around? He's like, well, I like the hunt. I'm like, you like the hunt? I'm like, you probably miss things. He's like, well, you know, and he just has to hunt around and follow. I mean, you got to get in deep to a sport. He's got to follow regattas. He's got to go and say who's on the national team or who's on the winning team. And it's not like the top ranked players in squash or basketball. It's a different type of sport. So.
But it's helpful though. I think that we're kind of, and this is, I think what you're saying is really helpful because again, I think that Dana's example is like, okay, here's like a pretty large group. Like I'll call them the low hanging fruit that we know she has access to, that we'll put this questionnaire together and we'll have a pretty high return rate. Yeah. I think that you're giving a really good example of there are definitely going to be some people out there that are going to be a little trickier. And quite frankly, like if they're not helpful, you know, we can dive into them later, but maybe we move on from them. Like we take the learnings and we keep them written down somewhere. And
I'm just saying, like different sports have different needs. Like, you know, it's much easier.
Yeah, crew's always been a little funky, and the Ivies have always been a little funky.
Be like that. Like maybe track and field is going to be like that too. Like, you know, it's a broader, you know, it's a different kind. I think we're basketball because that's my, you know, thing. But yeah, you're right. All these different sports that are not the big ones. Yeah, you got to think about.
Think that you're bringing up such an excellent point of don't necessarily just think of like your sweet spots and our comfortable points. And I think that maybe asking a friend that's in a sport that you're not as familiar with and having that conversation, because again, our low hanging fruit is going to be finding people that do need our help and need it quickly. And once we find one of them, we can go really, really deep. I don't want to get ahead of us because I have some insights from the pro side that I think that, you know, again, it's kind of like the tip of the iceberg kind of, you know, analogy of if we can get some insight from like a tennis coach, I don't know, I'm throwing out a random sport. And it's like, this is a huge problem. And it turns out like this is a problem across every single program. Then we know to jump in. So even though this guy wasn't as helpful, he was in a way, because it's kind of like, all right, well then like maybe we push them to the side for a little bit. And we dig in, you know, more with Dania's group that we know is going to be a little bit more responsive. So it's super helpful.
You can look at it like maybe get the big players first, and then, you know, if you build it, they will come, and then the smaller ones fold in. Maybe that's the strategy. You know, it's like
anyone that's going to have the conversation with us and actually give us good feedback on what the pain points are will be valuable. Those people are gold, I'd say. Right, Greg?
What's really exciting about this is Dania's talking about what usually is the money sport. usually it's basketball, baseball, and football are usually the sports where there's lots of scholarships in anything but Ivies. And there's also contracts with CBS Sports and those guys. So those are really hard to break into. But if we're taking it from the women's basketball side, Dana, are there contracts for, video contracts and stuff for women's basketball?
In terms of recruiting, or in terms of their actual streaming their games? What do you?
Yeah, streaming their games.
Yeah, we use a lot of ESPN. What was it? ESPN.
ESPNU, right?
ESPNU.
No, not the U. It was
Plus.
Yes, ESPN Plus had a package with all of the schools where they employ people to live stream their games, whether it's a cameraman, a journalism major, or somebody who wanted to be a broadcast major would do the game, and ESPN would pick up that footage, and they would obviously, you'd have to pay to get ESPN Plus, and people, your fans or your parents or recruits or whoever wanted to watch those games had access to those games live. So ESPN Plus was really huge in college basketball period. A lot of the games weren't not on national television. You could find them on ESPN Plus. All the schools pretty much had a package deal with ESPN Plus for live streaming.
That's a big hockey thing too, because it's just online.
Yeah. So ESPN Plus is really the major company that.
We're losing a little bit.
I kind of like the idea though that you guys just brought up, like, with women's. Maybe go against the grain. Don't go with the men big three where there's all this competition. Go like in the side door. Start with women's, like the big women's sports, whatever they are, basketball or volleyball.
I think it's anyone that's willing to have a conversation with us. I don't think we should cut them off. I think that we should explore every avenue, and if that's where, quite frankly, like your network is, like go for it. Like, Al might have a totally different network. Like go for it. I think these are kind of the basic kind of questions that we're trying to answer, and I think that if you guys come up with this really awesome questionnaire, and this whole group is kind of empowered with this piece, that they can go out and kind of use it as a jumping off point to talk to our networks. Who cares which door opens first? But I mean, I think that oftentimes if you can get in the door on the women's side and then they're sitting right next to the men's coach, like,
I think that's
hey, we found this great platform. This is so easy. And they're over there struggling to communicate to their players. I mean, usually if there's buy-in on one side, it gets around.
Yeah, it goes up too. The athletic director hears about it, and hey, the sports is really doing everything. And the concept of having a multi-sport platform is that when you have a baseball player who's also a football player and also is a lacrosse player, that person, once they're signed up, is up. They're in, and it's not hard for them to take to switch over to the same school's basketball team from their football team. So that's one. The other thing I was thinking about was it would be really cool if we had like a recruiting package that when we're going around asking these coaches, maybe the low-hanging fruit is asking them, listen, we're putting together a recruiting package. We need a couple of questions that we can ask kids who want to get recruited, like lifestyle questions. So a kid can actually sit at home and they read these questions and they answer them on video and then put them up on their profile, so that a coach can listen to them. Like, what are your goals? How far do you want to go? And
that's not being done. That's something unique. That's not, I don't see that out there in some kind of packaged way. Cause there's like a dozen or more recruiting apps. There's tons of them, but are they effective? Or are they just annoying middleman? And like, even like this Princeton guy coach was saying, his biggest challenge is not really finding them. It's more like finding the right fit and
that's what I was thinking.
Getting to
what Daniel was saying.
His pain point that he thought we couldn't address was financial aid, which you probably can't address, but it was more about like finding the right kid for that school. And for IVs, of course, it's academics first. But let's say it's another kid, another school where it's like whatever, like whatever they're looking for. How do you know that kid's the right cultural fit for that school, or it's the right academic fit? And that's unique because that happens when they meet the coaches face to face. And what if the kid doesn't even get the chance to meet the coach face to face? You know, you're trying to help these kids, right? And part of their package is not just their video of their game, but it's the academics. It's like, you know, who are they? You know, even the family. Some of these coaches, they don't want these loudmouth parents in the stands. You know, they want, they're interviewing the family sometimes too. You know, and who this kid is and what they're all about.
And I think that's kind of to Dania's point. Like Dania's point was talking about also making sure it's a good fit and lowering the transfer rate. And that seems to be like a really good, I'm having flashbacks of, did you guys have to take, like, we had to take like the personality test. I actually had to do this for work like 4 or 5 years ago. And I definitely had to do it in college. Like they sent us like a 200 question. It's so stupid. It was kind of like, hey, if everyone's jumping off a bridge, are you like, there was 200 of those questions. Yeah. And I think that it was like, you know, again, Dania, I'll defer to you on knowing the ins and outs of the NCAA rules, because I think that when I went through this process, it feels like a million years ago when I got recruited.
2 million for me, so don't feel bad.
Like, I just remember checking the box of like which sport I was declaring. And like, that's kind of the last thing I remember.
Yeah,
but I think that
she's absolutely right. What's happening out there, and I just went through it with my daughter. Like, I'll give you an example. I went to Rutgers. That was one of her big recruiting, very famous, world, Hall of Fame coach. And we did the whole pony show for the whole day. And he brought people in that were academics and everything. And I kept, and we got videos and movies about the coach. But then I asked him, I said, what's going on with the portal? Because a couple of their players were leaving, and it's more of a, Rutgers is more of a turnstile program, I guess. And they have graduate students and, different kind of culture. But I said, what's going on? Throughout the whole day, he kept saying, do you have any questions? Is that clear? Do you understand? And then it was kind of like redundant. And I said, can I ask you what's going on with this high transfer rate? What do you think it's about? Why do you think it's happening with this giant portal, with this huge portal? Because the portal is so big, it actually affects the kids coming in out of high school from getting recruited. Because the coach will take, an NCAA coach is going to take the kid who's a sophomore or a junior, even if they have to redshirt them, they'll take a sophomore before they take a kid out of high school who's unproven and maybe has to grow up and mature as a player. They'll take that sophomore. So that sophomore bumps that scholarship for the kid out of high school, right? So it's a train wreck, and Dania's totally right. But I asked the guy, I said, what is it that's happening here? And he said, what's happening is that the people don't understand. There's not enough communication. They just commit like super fast. They don't know the program. It's not the coach doesn't feel like they know them. It's like the kid doesn't know the program as well. It goes both ways. And he said, that's it. And then they just walk down the hall. It's so easy for the kids. They walk down the hall. They put themselves in the portal. Then the coach can't communicate with them. They're out. And then they're just like free game for the list, and they get recruited. And all you do is walk down the hall, and they talk to that person behind the desk, and they're off the team. And it happens like that. And then everyone all those coaches can see those lists of kids. She knows more about that than I do probably. But he said it was definitely about the lack of communication between the coaching staff who's recruiting that player and the player understanding what they're getting into. So it's communication. That's the pain point. And you can think, how can we solve that, right? And maybe a questionnaire is great. Maybe that's.
I think this questionnaire is going to be
I like the kid being interviewed on camera. You can, they're going to be, it's going to be contrived, like an interview. But you can at least get a sense of that personality that doesn't exist out there. I don't think that
I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
And I love it. I think it does give kids a personality. Sorry, Greg, I think I cut you off. Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say the same thing. I think it's really important that the coach sees the kid's personality and hears them and hears the drive in their voice, and hear that it's not the mom in the background going, say this, Johnny, and that kind of stuff. Right. Exactly. Here, let me fill that out for you. I'll take care of it, Johnny.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
I think this would be really helpful.
Yeah.
I think that personality assessment. I think that personality assessment is huge, and it's something that a lot of coaches do when it's too late, when the kids are already there, and now the team is having problems. Now we want to assess their personality and find out, how they want to be treated and how they want to be spoken to, and what ways they learn. At that point, it's a little too late. Once they're in your program and things are happening, it's too late. So that personality assessment, I think, should be part of the recruiting packet that these kids have to fill out, so coaches can view that and see if this is the type of, person they want in their program. I think that's just a huge point, that we can find ways to make that communication, and that interaction very clear. And like you said, you don't really get to know these kids until they walk on your campus, and then by then it's too late. And even the players that are there that are having issues, communication between the coaching staff and the players shuts down because the coaches are just worried about basketball and want to win, and the players want so many other things. They want a counselor, they want this and that. I think another area that'll make us unique is sports psychology, or somebody that can help these coaches deal with the players and their issues and their baggage. Because I'm not an MD, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, I'm a basketball coach. And at times, I have to be all those things and put basketball aside. And that's not fair to me or the kids. So I think one thing the coaches will need is access to resources such as sports psychologists, psychiatrists. I know there's centers on campus for that, but the kids also don't want to go up the hill to talk to somebody about their coach because they feel like that's too close for comfort. So to have I know we talked about having trainers involved on our app. I think mental health professionals will be huge.
That's such a good call.
The mental approach to the game is so very important. And I think if we can create a niche there as well, we'll not only help recruitable athletes, but we'll also help the athletes that are in college.
That's really insightful.
Yeah.
Really insightful, Dania. And I hear you. I think they had me as a freshman I had 6 teammates with eating disorders. One girl was cutting herself.
Oh my God.
And they had me as a freshman talking to them. Like, obviously this is 15 years ago, but I think that really interesting insight. And I think that, again, really envelops into this whole idea of the getting to know the whole kid before they step on campus as much as you can. Again, these kids are getting recruited as freshmen. Like 4 years later, they're showing up at your door. So I think that there's a lot of development there, but that's a really good insight. So just not to kind of cut this off, because I think this is a really good conversation, but just making sure we're being respectful of everybody's time. And we do have another segment to talk about. Just wrapping up on this, I think we're all in favor of putting together this one-pager.
Yeah.
Greg, Dania, Leslie, do you guys want to take the lead? Al, do you want to be involved in that, or do you just want to receive the one-pager? The questionnaire.
I don't need you to do, but I do have something to say.
Please.
Having been a college coach for 10 years at the D1 and D2 levels, I used to get about probably 10 to 20 videos a day. The problem that we had with the videos is the videos were never shot how we wanted to see them. So one of the big things, the pitcher and the pitching coach is I wanted to see the guy throw a bullpen session, being able to show me all of his pitches, being able to show me how he pitches from the stretch with runners on base. And then I wanted to see game footage of an actual game. Like I didn't want to see highlight footage of him striking out the number 9 hitter 10 times in a row. I wanted to see him through the lineup. I wanted to see him facing the top of the order. I wanted to see him facing guys with runners on base. I wanted to see all that stuff. So that was one of the things from a video standpoint.
So you had a real checklist of I want to see XYZ pitch. Like you had your checklist in your mind, and that's not necessarily what was being uploaded.
Yeah, there's a ton of different recruiting agencies out there that make videos, and a lot of them are crap. And I know they're charging kids a ton of money, and they're promising them the world. And we would get these videos. I'd watch some of them for like 2 seconds, and then I'd be like, "This is horrible," and I wouldn't even finish watching it. And that's a disservice to the kid.
Right.
So there's a central service, and that being us, that films the videos and sends the coaches exactly what they want to see. That's huge. Number 2, the biggest problem that we encounter as college coaches is all the stats are bogus. So if there was one kind of central scoring system throughout all of sports, which I think we can cover, that would be huge, because now how many times do you get stats from a kid and the kid's dad did the scorebook or his mom did the stats are false.
Amen. Amen.
In whatever sport that we're at, they say, "Hey, my kid averages 30 points a game in basketball and 15 rebounds and 10 assists." And then you see the kid in person, and the kid's not even close to that. And in baseball, the same thing. My kid throws 95. He's got an 87-mile-an-hour slider. Then you go see the kid pitch, and he's throwing like 75 miles an hour. So if there's some way that we can kind of like have a scoring system and have the score not be bogus and be real and the stats be real, that's a huge, huge tool that nobody's doing for college recruiting, for club ball, for summer league, for all that stuff. And the third thing that is huge, and Dania touched on it, and in football, when they're getting ready to do the draft and they're looking at all the players, they give them a mental test called the Wonderlic test. And in this test, it doesn't only talk about, like you were saying before, their sports acumen, but it also goes into, you know, a little bit more of like where their head's at and what kind of player they are. And are they a team player? Are they a me player? Do they not care about anybody else except themselves? Are they willing to sacrifice for the team? You know, what are they thinking in the pressure situation? You know, do they want the ball when its bases loaded, nobody out in the ninth inning, or do they want to come out of the game? Do they want to make that, you know, do they want the ball with 2 seconds left on the clock and they want to hit that winning shot, or they want to pass the ball to somebody else? So all those kind of things that really apply to like real game and real life kind of strategy is huge. So what Danny touched on is huge. And I think those other two things that we just talked about are huge. And there's probably a few more that I'd have to think about, but I think
No, that's really insightful.
that those are things that nobody's offering.
Maybe we just think about like look around, and we should really look at our competition, even though the competition is like no one's doing exactly what we're trying to do and look like one-stop shopping, but they're doing it in little, you know, we need to look at what they're doing and see what's missing. Like the video is missing of getting to know the player, like what all these different little things we can do. Maybe that's, you know, that you got to think about focusing and getting that ball rolling and seeing how we can get focus our energy on what's not being done, and then we can replicate what is being done maybe later. Maybe that differentiates us, right?
Yeah, and I think that to your point, it's not what's not being done, but it's also like, look at those guys that are doing it really well and take all the good from the top people that are doing all these little snippets and then rolling it into one. And that's, you know, it's funny. And Al, I think you touched on some really, really good points. I know in hockey, and this is again, like a really small little world, but like that stat verification thing happened because about 15 years ago, they came up with, and it's honestly, it's like 2 guys in Connecticut and my dad were verifying all the stats so that, to your point, and it got kind of intense because you had parents calling up and being like, my kid had an assist, like blah, 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 because the college coaches, knowing that it was a third party and knowing that it wasn't partial, it really started getting used by the NHL and all the D1 coaches because they knew it was impartial. And it's this like rinky dink, antiquated website from an old man in Connecticut and Buzz Patterson. And honestly, my father was getting in like legitimate fights over the phone over like stats. But I think to your point, does that kid really throw a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, or is it 82 on a good day? I mean, that's something that if we can be verified, kids got, 10 pitches, throw them, let's see. I think that, you've really got something there. So I think everyone's given some really good points. I've kind of taken notes on the side. I think that, and you guys tell me if you think this is off base, but I think for our next meeting, Monday, let's give a good update to the rest of the group on kind of what we're talking about and what our next steps are. But I think that our next meeting, and I'll set it up for sometime early next week, will be, let's really hone in on this questionnaire. And I think that let's go after the low-hanging fruit. Like Al obviously knows the baseball side, so maybe we can have Al start to build his network of who he would ask these questions to. And Al, you just shared some really good insights. So maybe it's, here's what I'm thinking, like, what else are your pain points? So that we have like a robust side from baseball. Leslie and Dania, I think you guys have the basketball market really well cornered. And again, let's get this questionnaire built that's easy. Like, I want to make sure people return it. A higher rate of return is more helpful for us than sending out a 15-page document. But I think that, our next step is kind of building this questionnaire and tailoring it to our individual networks. That'll get us the answers that we need. And then simultaneously, each of us kind of coming up with our little list of who we would individually send that questionnaire out to, or use that as an opening conversation. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And just wanted to add to it, the showcase business has become a huge recruiting tool in all sports, when it comes to getting into college. And if there was a way, and I know there is, that we were able to stream these showcases live on our website, it would be huge, because now a lot of coaches that weren't able to make that showcase can sit in their living room and watch talent.
Really good call, Al.
Will the showcase owners be against that, because that's sort of like their bread and butter?
Yeah.
They're not going to go.
Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe we run our own showcases through UB Sports.
Love it.
Love it.
That'd be fun. Also, about the verification, I've been saying for 6-7 years that we're going to find out from coaches for every sport, college coaches in particular. Tell me what stats you need to have for players in particular positions. You know, obviously, pitcher, you got to know ERAs, you got to know all the other stuff, and you got to watch them pitch. So that's sort of what I don't know if I explained to anyone in this group, but one of the ways you can do that is you have a video running, you have a kid with their ID, they hold up the ID, you know it's Johnny Smith, and then you have a radar gun, coach is holding the radar gun, you have a catcher on the other side, the pitch is done, and the pitch is like, it says 92 miles an hour, you hold up the radar gun to the phone, and it says 92 miles an hour. So you've now validated it. When you do that, you get a badge on that stat that says UB on it. It's a gold thing, and it's UB verified. So the more stats we can verify like that, and there are methods to verify a lot of different stats, like high jump for basketball, for example. The more stuff you can do like that, and the more verified stamps we get, the more coaches are going to believe what they're seeing. And
No, 100% right, Greg. And to add to that, if there's a way, and I know there is, because analytics obviously is huge in sports today, especially in baseball and basketball, and analytics and the numbers are for us old school guys, we don't really like it, but we have to give in because that's the way the world is now. If there's a way of being able to rate every skill that a kid does in that particular sport, and then there's some kind of measuring stick. So at the end, they have a rating of whatever it is, 1 out of 100. Maybe they're rated at like an 86.7 in a particular skill. And if that gets out there and it's recognized throughout sports, now when you get a kid and you know that he's rated, a certain number, he's able to play whatever, a major D1, a small D1, a D2, a smaller D2, D3, or something else that we didn't touch on either is NAIA, which there's I think like 3,500 NAIA schools out there that are a little bit behind in terms of technology. So as far as streaming their games, as far as getting alliances with the NAIAs, I think that's huge because a lot of times they don't get the credit as the NCAA schools do. But at the same time, we all know if your kid gets a full ride to an NAIA school and you don't have to pay for his college, it's huge.
Good call.
Yeah.
Well, with the couple minutes we have left, I did want to kind of talk about one of the things that, and again, this is one of those things that may be in your network, it may not, but I think that talking about and touching points on the intramural sports, and even a lot of the offerings right now the colleges are giving as far as yoga studios and Pilates and wellness. And Dania, I still keep thinking about your kind of the mental wellness connection that a lot of kids are given, and quite frankly, a lot of times it's introduced when kids go to the gym, to work out. They might have, that might be a place where they would see that flyer for mental health or something like that. But just wanted to kind of see, that's another one. And Greg's kind of point was along the lines of like from a line of questioning and trying to delve into our network of how are intramural sports booking their spaces. They obviously sometimes come second fiddle to if there is a D1 or a D2 or D3 sport of the same type at the school, like they obviously take second. So is there scheduling needs? Like what are their pain points as far as being an intramural program, and what can we do to help them? Obviously there's not a lot of, I would assume, a recruiting that goes on with that, but it's more along the lines of once the kid's on campus, what's the level of communication? How do you share information? How do you book the facility, all of that kind of stuff. So just wanted to throw that, just keep that in the back of your head as you're talking to these guys, that if they can introduce you to an intramural person or somebody who runs the intramurals for that school, that might be helpful insight for us as well.
Absolutely.
That's always a scheduling and logistical nightmare. So if there's a way to make it easier, that particular person is in charge.
Well, I'm going to go ahead. I can't hear.
Oh, if you can't hear, we'll catch you up later.
I'll put the video up on our team portal too.
Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and start to put together some questions for the questionnaire. Okay, I'll probably get that to you guys sometime over the weekend. I'll be able to have some time over the weekend to put some questions down that I think need to be asked of the coaches, so we can get good feedback for the portal.
Awesome. And then, Dania, I'll just put it on a Google Doc so that we all have it and then everyone can add to it. And then our next meeting will be paring it down.
Okay.
Sounds great. All right.
Perfect.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dania.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
So I know we have a minute left, but if you guys want to stay on for a minute, we can certainly talk about, but anyway, intramurals is important. That's one of the things that we want to, I think Al's got a good point, scheduling nightmare. What can we do to make their lives easier? It's probably going to be a very, very different conversation. It's probably also a different person in the athletic department. So
like
always,
they're the assistant to the assistant AD, right? It's like probably the lowest person now, you know.
but honestly, probably the person that's like, but they're probably so excited to take a meeting. Like they're probably like, oh my God, somebody's asking me how painful my day is. They're probably the first person to be like, here's my list. So by all means, I think that, you know, when we're lucky enough to get these meetings, I think one of the things that's going to be really helpful is let's try as a group to not leave those meetings without having an introduction to somebody else in the organization that can help us. So let's just, and again, that's kind of like 2 or 3 steps down the line now, but just keep it in your back of your head. Like when you get off the call with your network of friends, like if there's someone else that they would think, hey, you know what, there is a person in my department who's really struggling with this, like let me introduce you to them. Like let's try and leave every meeting with like kind of an introduction to the next group. So we did want to delve into pro. Leslie, I want to be respectful. I know you're not on that team. You're more welcome to listen.
Okay, I'm happy. I'm gonna go. You do that. And
yeah,
then,
no, I didn't want to steal any more of your time.
Google Docs for Dania's questionnaire. I'll add to it and give thoughts and feedback, whatever. Just email that to me and I'll look at it. Okay.
Awesome. So yeah, next steps are Dania's going to email me her start. As soon as I get that, I'll copy and paste it and put it on a Google Docs to all of us, along with a recap of kind of what we've talked about. Okay. And then everyone can kind of add to it, and I'll set up a call for, let's say, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, that we can kind of pare it down and people can kind of think of what questions they think are the most valuable, and we'll roll from there.
The other thing I would say, just as another thought, you probably all thought of this already, and everyone's kind of, you know, knows sports, but if you think about, like, even though recruiting is really like not the majority, it's like the minority of kids are really getting recruited. Like how many kids are getting recruited, even for Division III, it's, what is it? I don't know, 6%, 5%, or, you know, I don't know what it is. It's not big, but even if you get the recruiting thing down, it makes you look like the elite. And like all the models of all these, like overtime, I keep going back to with Greg, not because my daughter follows it, right? Because it's her sport. What are they doing? They're following the elite, the top players, the top, you know, high school players in that sport. So even if you think, okay, our bread and butter is the masses of all the other minority sports, not the big 3, and that's what we want to get. That's going to be numbers, and that's what we want. If you think about recruiting as like a carrot, right? And it makes you the elite, definitive kind of like you know really covering all bases in their sport, and you're recruited. And a lot of kids are just aspirational; they're never going to get recruited, but they're paying money for travel teams. So even if you get the recruiting tool right, and you make the UB Sports look like this definitive, in-depth, very, you know, legit, that coaches are going to, people who have aspiration or just love the sport are going to follow. They might just go on the kids portal, the top 10. Like my daughter knows the #1 point guard in the country, played with her last summer. Kids just follow these kids on social media, just to see them play, or just to know who they are, or say, oh my God, she's following me on Twitter, you know, whatever. But if you get the eyeballs, what will happen if you get these portals of these top players, or these kids who want to be, you know, recruited, you're going to get the kids that are socially just want to look at them and look at their portal and see what they say on camera. And maybe everyone can access it, or maybe it's only coaches only on the interview, but whatever it is, they're going to follow those players. So by getting those top recruiting, if it's only like 5% or whatever percent that is, you're going to get the teenage followers for that college player or that high school player. And that's really who you want, are the masses, right?
Yeah, no, and I think that you bring up a really good point of, you know, look, obviously UB Sports is talking to the masses, and that's really important, and that's going to be a big part of who we are. But I think what's always good about recruiting is it's such a moneymaker, because people are dying to throw money. Like parents are dying to throw money at these recruiting things.
Kids don't know, parents don't know, kids don't know. It's a mystery, and I got all these weird dumb apps on my phone. I'm like, you know, they didn't help me at all. What helped me is someone in my ear about a daughter who got recruited and was the same kind of type of player, and that helped me the most. It's insight from, like, you want the inside kind of scoop on how it works, or, you know, who someone who knows the process. And I don't know. That's really what you need to do. Get those aspirational kids to follow the top players, even if it's just who's getting recruited, or, you know. And my daughter knows exactly, like these teenagers, they know exactly who these kids offer. They put it on Twitter. My top 5 choices, college or this. People will just go on to see who this player, who they know, what their offers are and what their top 5.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, you're going to get the social stuff is a windfall. It's like the backside of that, you're going to get that. So recruiting seems like the minority, but if you get it right and we do it really well, you're going to bring that social crowd to follow that in.
And if you can,
Right.
tutor the parents through the process, because you just hit it on the head, Leslie.
Ding, ding, ding.
I have no clue. Just like with my daughter with her club volleyball team, I've been telling the parents, I'm like, listen, pick out 10 schools, 20 schools, 50 schools that your daughter might be interested, start contacting them. And they're looking at me like, holy cow, I never thought of that.
I don't know what to do.
Yeah, like a blog almost. Like we could even do a video blog of like Parent
like a
101.
portal, like almost like a recruiting portal, like a blogs and articles and, you know, just experts, you know, and you could just get someone else's content and bring it in and make your own, create your own content, write
It's a
blogs.
really interesting, it's Leslie, that's a really interesting point because I think that we're all, I'm just making a note of a parent recruiting portal. You know, I think that we're all athletes and typically parents of kids are also athletes and most of them, quite frankly, have gone through the process. But again, it becomes so dated. Like my dad was a pro athlete in 2 sports. By the time I was getting recruited, he was like, what? I don't know any of this. He didn't know any of the rules. He's not really a rule follower, but like he didn't know what to say to me. So, I mean, it was kind of like, you know, he had his own unorthodox way of handling scouts and stuff like that. So I think that we have to even talk to the parents of like, some of these parents have probably never even played sports and now their kid's getting recruited and they don't know what to believe. I think that's an interesting angle.
I mean, Al is right. They're in the dark, they're clueless, and they don't really know. And even as an athlete, I was recruited, but it's a totally different animal than it was when I was recruited. So my knowledge is like totally dated, right? So it's not relevant. I think
having a 101 or even like a weekly, like think about how many parents would tune in to like if we did like a weekly half hour of like recruiting tips for parents, like I think that's gold.
I mean, I don't know. You maybe you can interview coaches. I don't know if they would do that or not, but you can certainly write articles and get content, either borrowed content or you can create your own content. You can interview coaches. They probably do that. Maybe not an on-camera interview, but if you get an on-camera interview of coaches, what they're looking for, I mean, every parent's going to go on and look at that, you know?
Parents have no idea how much academic. I'm sorry. What's that?
No, get it, Al.
Parents have no idea, aside from athletic money, how much academic money is available to kids in what particular school. So as an example, your kid wants to go to whatever school, Montclair State in New Jersey, and you know they might only be able to get $10,000 athletic money, but if their grades are, you know, whatever, over a 3.0, over a 3.5 or whatever, they might be privileged to whatever, 10, 15, 20, 30 grand in academic money. So I think to a parent, do they really care if their kid's getting X amount academic and X amount athletic as long as they're getting that school paid for? But most parents don't know that. We've had that conversation with a ton of parents.
I got a full art scholarship. Providence. See, I'm dead serious. They called and they were like, we're offering you a full art scholarship. And I was like, well, I'm not that good.
That's really funny because I got a full scholarship for cello at Coast Guard Academy.
Yeah, I was like, they gave me a painting scholarship, and I was like, this seems fake. All right, well, this was
so many different angles. I'll let you go. We'll talk.
Appreciate your time, Leslie, and have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Leslie, that town I was thinking of is Peekskill.
What's that?
The town I was thinking about before was Peekskill.
I'm gonna find Gabby's name. I'm gonna email it to you because I know she's a volleyball player right around there. I'll hook you up. Okay. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Or bye. So Al, I know we're over time. Do you have like 5 minutes to talk about pro sports?
Yeah, no problem.
So some of the insight I was sharing with Greg, and I'll just make this, but again, this is kind of like building off of what we just kind of chatted about. So basically, our pro team is us and Dania, and obviously she had to run. But I think that what we're trying to figure out is from a team and league perspective, again, kind of similar conversation. What are your pain points? How can we help you solve them? You know, one of the insights that I got from working with both the Rangers and the Knicks that I had shared with Greg is that the Rangers and the NHL and USA Hockey are all very linked. There's a lot of money there. The league supports USA Hockey with funds. The league also, you know, supports the teams and their youth initiatives through funds. And then in the same circle, USA Hockey kicks in a lot of money to the individual teams for them to run their junior Rangers, junior whatever, street hockey and ice hockey programs. And part of the psychology there is the league had done a study about 10 years ago that was basically like, if you hadn't picked up a hockey stick or watched a hockey game by the time you're 10 years old, you're not going to be a fan. And so the thought process was, if we don't have kids being exposed to hockey, we have no future season ticket holders. So selfishly, the league does it so that they can put, butts in the seats. But so that's a system that works really, really well in the youth space. So like the NHL is really thriving when it comes to youth sports. But what their pain point is communication to kids and how to do it legally is always really tough. And getting people to actually sign up on email, because again, you need parental things. So that's kind of like a high level, straight from the horse's mouth. The Rangers are one of the top programs. The NHL's doing it really well with youth hockey. That's their pain point. Their pain point is, how do we really market to the kids, given that the parents have to sign off? The Knicks, on the other hand, had a totally different problem. And part of that is USA Basketball and the NBA don't have a great relationship. And there aren't funds that are exchanged. And therefore, the team programs are very underfunded because the league can't support it and USA Basketball isn't supporting it. So whereas the Rangers spend, $100-something thousand every year on their junior Rangers, the Knicks are spending like 10,000. Like it's a massive, the Rangers are spending 10 times on the youth program than basketball is. Like, that's a big difference. And so the youth impact in the market is just significantly, now granted, basketball is a lot cheaper to execute than hockey. So I think that's something that you have to play into it. But one of the things that the pain points are for the Knicks is definitely a little bit different than the Rangers, but they still have that, how do we communicate to kids question. So that's just one insight that I had gotten from talking to both the Rangers and the Knicks of a pain point that they have, is that they want to increase the ability for the kids to communicate to each other. And from that, Greg kind of took it another step further. And how do we build a network that the kids can talk to each other and they can all become a group and they can all feel included? And everyone from the kid that's playing hockey up in Greenwich to the kid that's playing street hockey down in Harlem, and how we get all of those kids kind of in a community talking to each other. So that was kind of a youth hockey, youth basketball insight from the leagues and the teams. And then, not to completely keep rambling, but my other insight from meetings with the NFL is that the NFL, for the first time last season, started funding flag football. And part of it was they finally acknowledged the concussion issue. So it was one of those things where and each team has its own platform. I was telling Greg, like, the Jets are an interesting example. The Jets have 4 communities, that the community organization groups that they fund, and 3 of them are non-football related, because they're the Johnson family personal family foundations and platforms. So only one of them is youth sports based. And the other pain point for all of these teams and leagues across, all the major sports, is the community department is usually 2 people, and they're tasked with a really, really wide range of activities. And quite frankly, they need administrative relief. So I think when it comes down to helping out all these kids and stuff, they don't have the bandwidth. So I think that a platform like ours that can take administrative relief off of the teams is massive. But I think that one of the things that's just interesting information for us to think about is the NFL is finally funding flag football. They're doing it through their teams, and they're keeping it as a pillar. And those teams are going to need ways to communicate each other and become their own little league. Because again, it's kind of a sport. It's a new sport on the rise. So just some insights from some conversations that I've had through a couple of the different leagues and teams and sports. But similarly to what we're trying to tackle in college, this group will be specifically designated to the pro teams and leagues, and we'll be trying to tackle their pain points. So I think maybe in a similar way to the questionnaire, I like that idea. Like, maybe let's try and think about questions that, if we can shoot it to our contacts in the pro leagues and teams, who they might be able to say like how they need help. It doesn't necessarily have to trickle down to youth, but just let's make sure we're opening some doors there. Does that make sense, Greg?
We do an NFL flag football program in here in our facility, so I'm familiar with that.
Great. Okay.
So we built into our fee. It's I think $25 per kid, and they send us jerseys, they send us footballs, flags, They send us all that stuff. So we already have a relationship with them, and it's been fine.
So wait, who's sending you the actual stuff? Is it
Yeah,
through the NFL or is it through the Giants?
No, it's through the NFL.
Through the NFL. Okay.
That's really cool. Yeah, there are two associations. There's the U.S. Flag Football Association and the American Flag Football Association. There are
Awesome. Yeah.
It's USA Football.
Is it through USA Football?
So,
I don't know.
I think it is too. Because again, I think they're trying to work that angle of they're almost trying to keep it under one umbrella so that the contact football doesn't lose funding.
Sure.
But they're just they're just shifting somewhere some of the dollars go.
also, we have I have a friend of mine who's actually here the other day, and we've done some basketball stuff together. And he works for the Junior NBA, and he runs all the camps for I want to say 11 teams in the NBA. So he's got, he's got a pipeline with the NBA, and obviously with their camp division and all that stuff. And I agree with what you said. I think there is a gap between getting the youth involved and getting them, obviously if you're a Jet fan, how do you start cultivating Jet fans and keeping them in the fold and keeping them following football from when they're, whatever, 5 or 6 up until, 80 or whatever. So there's definitely a way, there's a gap there, and there's definitely a way that I think UB can be that bridge that bridges the gap. And maybe it's like getting some kind of affiliation with these programs, as well as maybe like a social network that maybe the kids can all be part of that social network for UB, where they can kind of feel like they're a part of their particular favorite team, and they can kind of go back and forth through the social network, and you know how kids are. My team's better than your team. Who's starting this week in the fantasy league? All that kind of stuff. I don't know if there's anything out there like that. So I think UB can kind of be that bridge. That's my 2 cents. I think the same.
That's
thing
really
with
helpful.
So the American Flag Football League is like the flag football version of the NFL. Like Michael Vick plays in it, and a bunch of other really big NFL players that are now playing flag football.
And do they have a youth arm? Like, are they in charge of the youth flag football?
I don't know yet.
I think that's attached to the NFL.
Yeah, it's USA Football that does that. I got to look at my paperwork, but yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, Al, I think that'd be helpful if you could kind of try and dig into that a little bit, and we just get some insights. I reached out to my guy at the NFL who, just to reconnect, who was overseeing all of youth sports, and I think they've moved him on. Obviously, with the announcement that they're coming back on time yesterday, I think that those guys are probably really swamped right now. So I'm going to wait a couple days to follow up with him.
Wow.
But yeah, I think that's an interesting, that's just because I think that it's a really growing sport. It'll be interesting to see if there's ways that we can talk to them. Again, if it's really being run through the NFL, they're such a pain in the ass to work with that they may not be the low hanging fruit.
Right. I'm not seeing anything that says that they're affiliated with the NFL. But it's a bunch of different athletes. It's not just football athletes. They have runners. They have, everybody.
This is junior NBA stuff. I'm just looking for swag or stuff from the. Just give me a second. I have it in here. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I can hear you.
Yeah, I think it's really worth looking into, especially if we are the site that espouses them. They had 37 million views on AFFL social media, 2 million broadcast viewers, 1.4 million marketing impressions, 1,500 world-class athletes.
I think they're an interesting angle to run on, just because I think that they're really quickly growing.
It's beautiful.
NBA stuff, comes with all the information.
So wait, so junior NBA, it's totally with the NBA. It's not at all funded or associated with USA Basketball.
Junior NBA, totally from the NBA, sponsored by Under Armour.
See, that's what's so different. Like, hockey is so well funded and so tied into USA Hockey.
NFL flag, USA Football. You see
Powered by USA Football. Okay.
Right, you see that?
But USA Football, I think USA Football and obviously those logos, I did a lot of licensing back in the day. If they're both on the same thing and they do the powered by, they have an association and there's funds back and forth. That logo is awesome.
Yeah. So that's where we get our jerseys from, USA.
Okay. All right, so then that is overseen by the NFL and probably funded by US, a little bit by the NFL and US. Okay, all right, yeah.
Yeah, these are the footballs they send us. Just to give you an idea. I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah, that's.
It is helpful because I can read between the lines on that.
Okay.
And also, I'll just then confirm with my NFL guy that all that's true, what I'm thinking.
You know, with MLB, they do the RBI program, which they go into, you know, like the stressed areas around the country, and they do some camp stuff, and it's a great program, but they kind of leave out the rest of the population.
Well, that's because they're trying to do Cal and his brother have like the formalized, like they're trying to splinter their funds so that they're still supporting Cal Ripken baseball. Like obviously, like I don't know if this happened out by you, but like a couple years ago, the Babe Ruth League that was out here all of a sudden became Ripken baseball.
Right.
And so Cal and Billy are really tied into, and again, like I used to run clinics when they were like just starting, and it was like Nike was sponsoring. We would do these big showcases at All-Star games and stuff like that. But like they're kind of doing RBI is the underfunded, underprivileged arm of every single team has to have an RBI program that goes out into the community and donates a certain amount of money. And again, that's baseball funded. So MLB pumps in $10,000 to $15,000 per team. It's all very well funded. It's awesome that they're doing it. And then the Cal and Billy stuff is more of like the parents that can afford to pay.
Yep.
But they also get supplemented a little bit because again, not every kid that, I mean, obviously those teams are trying to fund like really good teams. Like if a kid can't afford to play and he's the star player, like that kid's playing and somebody's covering that cost. So there's a little bit of that with help with uniforms and stuff like that. But I can reach out to my friends at baseball and see what they're so in limbo right now about what's going on. I can reach out to my buddies at baseball though and see what the plan is. They're not going to have any information for the upcoming season because things are just getting finalized. But I can certainly get an understanding of their pain points in communicating both on the RBI side and then on the Cal side.
The other thing with, and this is something that I've had in my mind for several years now. So, as an example, the Mets have a baseball school in the Dominican Republic, just like a lot of teams do, right? They have their baseball academy in the Dominican or in Puerto Rico. And it's great, you know. It's a great service for the kids. It's a great service for that particular team because now they're getting to see those kids, you know, when they're 10 years old, 8 years old, or whatever, and they're able to kind of keep an eye on them. Very similar to what they do with, you know, soccer in Europe, right? I played a year of baseball in Italy, and if you were a good soccer player, AC Milan, like, picked you up at 8 years old and put you in their academy. The thing I always said is, how come MLB doesn't have, like, an academy, you know, here in New York, or how come they don't have an academy here in the States? You know, why is it only down there? Like, as an example, I have a building here that if the Mets came to me and said, hey, Al, you know what? I'd like to start a baseball academy and be the Mets academy in your facility. You know, I'd certainly be open to it. And then at the same time, a particular kid that's a good athlete at whatever age, do you think he wants to play for the, you know, Chucky McGillicuddy All-Stars, or does he want to play for the Mets academy team? You know what I mean? So that's kind of something I always felt like was lacking.
That's interesting.
I think that's something that, and if you were able to kind of pitch that to the right person, I think they'd be all over it. Because the bottom line is, you and I both know, Kelly, they're spending tons of money on stuff that, you know, isn't really helping in their development, but they're just spending it because, you know, the way the money flows, you know, and you know, licensing money, and you get all that. So
it's interesting that, so I'm trying to think of who you would ask that question to. Like, I'm trying to think of who in the organization you would ask that question to, or whether, like, and who at the league. I need to put some thought into that.
I'll give you an example. I have a friend of mine, a guy named Ray Negron, and he lives not too far from you, Greg. And Ray has worked for the Yankees for, I don't know, like 35, 40 years. He's got the story of, he was as a kid, he was spray painting outside on the side of Yankee Stadium, and George Steinbrenner walked up and said, hey, kid, what are you doing? He's like, I'm spray painting my name on the side of the stadium. And George is like, what are you doing that for? He's like, well, I don't got anything else to do. He's like, that's it. I'm giving you a job. I'm hiring you. And he was like, okay. And he's worked for the Yankees ever since. So a few years back, and he's a funny guy. I mean, he's just kind of a goofball, but he's had this job with the Yankees for all this time. But a few years back, because his kids were pretty competitive, he started up a team called Hank's Yanks. And Hank Steinbrenner was actually subsidizing the team. And I was a pitching coach for him one summer because he asked me to be, and it wasn't a ton of money, but he was giving them like, I don't know, maybe like 40 or 50 grand a year just to kind of take care of expenses and uniforms and stuff like that. And I thought the concept was great. And I tried to talk to Ray about like growing it. I'm like, Ray, we should grow this and make this bigger and, create an academy just like I'm talking to you about now. And Ray, like I said, he's kind of a goofy guy. And he's like, oh, well, whatever. And, nothing ever came of it. But I thought that could have been like the basis of what we're talking about here. You know what I mean?
There's I have so many thoughts going through my head right now that it's like a little overwhelming.
This is the problem.
I don't know who your contacts are in MLB, if it's more on the marketing side.
I know everybody. I worked there for years.
Oh, okay. So maybe this is something we can talk more about going forward.
Yeah, I think we need a full-blown conversation, because I just think there's a lot of layers. And again, I think that with us coming in and being like, hey, we're a solution to let you guys do this. What happens with all of these teams and all of the, really with baseball baseball's in a world of its own, because quite frankly, the volume of games that the staff have to go to, attend, and prepare for, game day when you work for a team is straight shit show.
No,
chaos in the morning, chaos all day, and when they freaking throw that first pitch, you're like, thank God. Like, it's chaos. So I think that these guys don't have a ton of time to actually start to be innovative and creative, and I think that they need people like us to come in and be like, here's our thought. We know you've already talked about it, but here's how we can help you execute it. And again, that was kind of my point with the NFL, and the hockey thing is, we need to be administrative relief to these teams. That is something that will be so appealing, because they don't have time. They don't have time to noodle these conversations, and they don't have time to kind of execute any of these programs. So I think anything that we can come to them and be a full service solution to get their name, their brand, their touch points to the community, whatever that checklist looks like, anything that we can come in and be the solution, I think they're all ears, and they definitely have the funds. To your point, like, he's throwing 50 grand into this. If he can throw the 50 grand to us and we take over, that's kind of honestly what, in my last job, that's what happened with the Rangers. And I was telling Greg that I took an initial $15,000 and turned it into $110,000, $115,000 within 2.5 years. Because quite frankly, they just needed administrative relief. They needed people to help them actually execute it, like pick up the phone and call all these organizations. Like, they didn't have time, and they only have 40 home games. Baseball has 80 normally. Like, I think it's so overwhelming for those guys. And I know how crazy their days are. That this is a really interesting conversation. I think that I think we need to have a baseball specific pro conversation, and maybe one more next week. And then from that, I'll see who I can reach out to at the league.
Well, I'm just saying this about Major League Baseball, but the model I'm talking about really applies to every sport, because is there like a junior Knicks basketball program out there? Is there a junior Rangers hockey program out there where they're kind of sponsoring it? So now you live in New Jersey, and there's a great 10-year-old that lives around the corner from you, and he's playing for the, whatever, the New Jersey Wings or whatever team he's playing for. Wouldn't the Rangers want to start like seeing this kid?
Well, I got to be honest with you, no. And I think that they take a lot of pride in their recruiting. It's not like, if this is talking about like coming up with like the most stellar athletes and coming up with like a recruiting, like actual funnel to the leagues, the teams don't want anything to do with that. And I think that it's an administrative headache, and I think they want to rely on their scouts.
Well, it's not that as much as it's lending their name to a program that's getting them the grassroots marketing and getting all the kids in the area that want to play for the junior Rangers as opposed to playing for the, whatever. The junior
That's the right mindset. That they are trying to do. Because again, they're just trying to slap a Rangers, they're trying to slap a Yankees jersey on every kid, so that every kid then goes to their local. I always use the Modell's example. I gotta every kid goes to their local Dick's Sporting Goods and buys that Yankees jersey because they were given the Yankees t-shirt. So that's that absolutely, and again, it's bigger than just baseball because that's being done at every level of every team and every sport, and they all have junior programs.
You know, I just think about that soccer model all the time because, like I said, I spent a year playing in Italy, and these teams, AC Milan, you know, Juventus, whatever, they used to fight over these kids, right? Because they all wanted the best talent to start grooming them at a young age. So they would literally say, all right, we saw this kid who's 10 years old, and I'm not saying we do the same thing here, but maybe you do the same thing from a grassroots standpoint, where at least you get them for that particular team. Maybe they're not the best kid, but the kid feels like he's the best. He feels great. The parents love it. The neighborhood loves it. The community loves it because we got to keep playing for the, you know, for the junior AC Milan team, you know.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I think that there's a lot to unpack there that I think that we can kind of start to work on, but it's really good start.
Yeah, I just figured like UB Sports could be like the conduit for that or something, right? Right, Greg?
Yeah.
And where we can play.
Absolutely.
Well, I love it. And Al, thank you for taking extra time with us. I know that we ran over by about a half an hour, so I really appreciate it.
That's what. Anything I can do to help, let me know.
You're the best. Thank you. And we'll talk to you on Monday morning, and I will certainly be in touch and send recaps of these meetings.
Great,
Awesome.
thank you. I'll put the whole video up on the site.
And Greg, I know we still have a little bit of time. Do you want to stay on this platform, or do you want me to give you a call?
I'll stay here. It's fine.
All right. Al, you're relieved of your duties.
All right.
Off your day.
Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend.
You too. I'll talk to you later, Greg.
Talk to you later, Al. Thanks a lot.
Okay, you got it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That was awesome.
He's got a couple of big hitters who are thinking about investing too.
He does?
But yeah. Well, he's in Port Washington, and that's all big hitters over there. So
He's such a sweetheart. That guy's great.
I'm so gifted with this crew between you and him, and I talked to Dave for like 45 minutes, an hour. He's going after like ESPN and Hulu and Sling and.
Well, I think Dania's point of so when Dania brought up ESPN Plus, my first thought was Dave's going to be able to explain. I know the rights and carriage deals for the leagues, but college is a whole nother level. And honestly, there's so much money there. There's so much money because every one of those schools pays ESPN in order to video and do those games. And to her point, you've got some freaking broadcast major. It's an interesting model that Dave will be able to kind of tell us who's BSing us, which I think will be helpful.
Okay, so wait, I'm confused. So
yeah, hopefully I can help.
Schools are paying ESPN to broadcast their things on.
There's a rights deal. So usually what happens is, and again, it kind of starts with it starts big and then it starts to trickle down, is a lot of times, and again, I'm gonna conjecture with some of the college things, and I think Dave will be able to clarify it. So Major League Baseball signs a deal and they're going to go with Fox. Remember they went with Fox and it was a big freaking deal.
Sure.
Leading up to that arrangement, you have all of these different networks pitching to get their games and their premier games and their World Series and their All-Star games and their drafts. And there's a package and they all bid on it. And then they pick the best one / the one that's going to give them the most money. And then 5 years later, it all happens again. The leagues are pretty, it's pretty cut and dry. There's different relationships with, all right, the Rangers are going to be on MSG.
Right, of course.
But they have, obviously every team has their own network, but MSG has to black out on days that the NHL plays on NBC.
Right.
So every Monday Monday and Wednesday is the designated game. So you go to turn on MSG and you notice it's blacked out, to go to NBC. College, from what, again, not my sweet spot, but I know a little bit about it. So depending on what your league is, so you've got the Independents, you've got Ivy, you've got, the Big East, blah, 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 the SEC. They all individually go to market and get bid on by all these different networks. But the schools themselves kick in money to the fund. There's money that is exchanged back and forth between the schools going to the league and then the league making the decision And then when they get all this money, it gets trickled back to the schools. So as far as I know, they all profit from whatever. That's why they empower their person to negotiate the best deal. So sometimes when you get put on ESPN Plus, it's like a major slap in the face because it's not on television, it's online.
Right.
So like I went to go watch some hockey game and it was like the finals and it was on freaking ESPN Plus. And quite frankly, I went up to my club, invited a bunch of people and put the friggin' hockey game on at the bar at the club so that everybody could watch it. And I streamed it through my computer. And so like some, schools are always looking for more exposure and stuff like that. And so that's something that like sometimes when you're put on ESPN Plus, it's like a slap in the face because you weren't good enough for a TV contract. But
So,
Dave can explain all the ins and outs, I'm sure.
So we're not really competing against ESPN Plus as far as they just got there first. If we can offer them a deal where it's cheaper, or they're even making money on it.
I don't even know if it's that. They want exposure. It's eyeballs. Like when we can start to prove that we have this mammoth network, that's where we're valuable.
Right. Okay.
It's the eyeballs. And again, you have to think about it from all the different perspectives. If you're a parent who's trying to get their kid recruited and you want to use a platform, you want the most eyeballs, right? The most quality eyeballs, because you want your kid getting exposed that way. If you're a program and you're trying to grow your program and grow the awareness of your program, you want eyeballs. It's not who's actually giving you the most money. It's who's giving you the most exposure.
Yeah.
So there's always interesting angles there with the TV contracts. And they're very lucrative, but again, a lot of it is exposure.
And the quality of the network as well. I mean, you want.
Totally. Like that was, I gotta say, hockey and golf were pioneers in the HD space. Like you could see undulations in a green before you were able to see like all the colors on an NFL uniform. Like golf and hockey, and actually I want to say even skiing might have been the third one, were pioneers when it came to technology and really invested a lot of dollars in the top technology of the time. And I think that's just something that we all should keep in the back of our minds as far as when we start talking about video capabilities and we're going to be a front runner in video capabilities. Like who's that important to? It's really important to the NHL. Like they have put their hat on. It's the only thing they've put their hat on in years is that they are the most tech savvy of all the leagues. And it's something they really pride themselves on. And they're followers in so many other areas of sports. But I think when it comes to tech and when you're talking about video, again, like we know that that's going to be a sweet spot of ours. That's when you start going after esports and then also leagues and teams that really value video quality. Like if that's something that's really important, and again, to scouts, to recruiters, whoever it is, that's when we kind of start to say like, who can we help with this solution?
Also, I think we have once we get this video system up and we can catch live streaming really well, all these small, like NAIA is a great example of where we can move in there, but also the budding pro leagues. I mean, there's a badminton league that can be pro. There's, overseas, that's really big. Track and field's really big, pro. And they're not seen anyplace. I don't know of any pro sport outside of the top 5, 6 that you see on TV ever. And they're pros. They're getting paid. People pay money to go and sit in seats. So, but flag football is a great place to be because there's some big people playing that game. And the AFFL is something we got to really research.
Yeah, and I think, again, like think about when shit hit the fan with the quarantine, like ESPN was broadcasting cornhole.
I know. What else?
Because it was a socially distanced sport. I was like, I'm watching cornhole because it is the only thing that's on television right now. So, I mean, again, I think that like everybody has these deals. Everybody's looking for exposure. Like this is kind of continuing along the pain point conversation of like, we're going to be able to help people, and like we should just, you got to tackle it like low hanging fruit. Like let's go after the people that need our help. Let's start to build a network. Let's start to throw some big names on our roster so that when we're going into meetings with the NHL or Major League Baseball or the NBA, that we can say like, we're already working with the pro bull riding league. Those guys are huge.
Yeah.
They are massive.
Why not?
Why not?
Great idea. Also, frankly, polo is a pro sport, and that's a fun to watch. So there's a lot of stuff we can do. Like,
and also they have money. I think that look, I worked for a league with money, and then I worked with a league with didn't have money, and I think that part of it is when the leagues have money, they're looking to spend it, and it's polo has money. Like, let's go for it.
And it's a really good place to like. It's very easy to video because it's a big wide field, and all you need is some zoom lenses on cameras and follow them horses back and forth and watch them shoot, or ponies, I should say. And so I think that'd be really fun. Those kind of sports are really cool, but also we should really do some digging as to what pro sports there are outside of the top 6.
Yeah, I think that
those leagues.
I also just think it's easier. It's easier. We may not have contacts there, but they might be easier to get meetings with those guys.
That's what I was thinking. And they have big followings. I mean, they all do. And that's what's cool about ESPN. I'm esports. I'm sorry. They have so many followers. It's ridiculous.
Well, and again, that's why esports is so valuable. And quite frankly, they're not organized yet. So it's a little bit of the wild, wild west. So it's like you can kind of accidentally get into meetings with those guys because there's no governing body.
Yeah. And you can offer a great video package. Obviously, most of it's taken up by Twitch already.
Yeah.
Which is like the thing. But there are a lot of independent game manufacturers that are looking for platforms.
Well, and also, for every Twitch, there's always somebody that comes behind them that disrupts, and we could be that person.
So the numbers on contracts for these video contracts are in 9 figures.
Oh, it's insanity. It's like straight insanity.
For esports, it's like unbelievable. Hi, doggy. Okay.
That did not waste much time.
Maybe.
This is part of the conversation.
Okay, so I'm going to show you something.
Perfect.
Let me screen share you.
Hold on, I got to plug in too. I'm low on battery. And I just want to give you a heads up. I literally have a hard stop in like 15 minutes.
Okay. So Tony just sent me this stuff.
Oh.
So there are 9 of them.
All right, keep going.
Just quickly, that's one.
Ooh. I don't like the colors, but I like the idea.
3.
No, that's too close to Under Armour.
I was thinking actually it's like Miami.
Yeah, I'm not wild about that. That's pretty close to what we have.
I like the stylization of the UB.
It needs to happen, so I'm glad that this is in the right direction.
It does.
Oh.
I know it's off the path.
Well, 1970s. Okay.
And that's it.
Hold on, scroll back up to like the second page, I want to say. What was the circle one? That's pretty cool. And go up.
Okay, that's one.
These are these are good. I think that we have a lot to work with here. I still am with you on the red, white, and blue. So like, I got to be honest, I'm not loving a lot of the coloration. Like red and black to me, I just don't like it.
I agree.
Part of it is honestly, I worked for the Devils. Red and black is very limiting.
Yeah, exactly. It is
very limiting because honestly, like when you put it on a blue shirt, it looks like shit.
Well, you got red and white. You can't go red.
I'm like cursing like a sailor today. I've got to stop doing that.
Yeah, you're cursing, man.
I'm cursing, but I like the direction of these. I want to kind of print them out and digest them a little bit, but I like the stylization of the U and the B. That one's strong. That one with the circle around it might be my favorite, and doing it red, white, and blue.
Yeah, I moved the sports over about a quarter and like a quarter letter just to make it centered under the UV, but then put that on circle. I think that'd be awesome.
And honestly, I think that from a cost-saving standpoint, if we can come up with a 2-color logo we'll save so much money when we go to start making product. We need a 2-color logo because I think that the white, like to do something in red and blue and then have white be like part of it, like you don't get charged for white.
Well, I still
I'm
you have to have something that works on a dark background and a white background.
100%. So I think that we can come up with ways, but I like that one a lot.
Just needs a little
I
adjustment.
like that one.
This is sports has to be moved over a bit.
Yeah, and also like I mean obviously the UB and maybe like a really dark navy blue.
Yeah, exactly. I would love that.
That's pretty sick. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm partial to this one. Like on this, I can see
I like this one too.
it'd be nice on
But
on
look,
the back. Like on the
but
back.
look, this is just a stacked one of the one above. So like we're gonna have to have both varieties. It's the same logo.
Well, that's why I say
So we
these three are my favorites. This one I do like, but the UBs are different on all of them.
Yeah, and I think that so just thinking about it, like besides needing on a light and a dark background, we need it vertically stacked and horizontally stacked because depending on the orientation of like, I just did this for my husband's company, so I know something about this. Their logo when they did it on LinkedIn was so small because it was like this blue and black one on top right now.
Right.
That when by the time they went to upload it on LinkedIn, it was so microscopic that you couldn't read it. They needed a version like the one like that.
Yeah.
So I think we just need to, once we pick the stylized UB that you like, it just needs to go to the designer and it gets formalized as a stacked, as a vertical, and then obviously on a dark background, light background, blah, 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 blah. And also just clear background so that we can throw it on presentations. Love it though. I'm
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if we find a middle ground between that UB and this UB, I think we're in business.
I love it. I think it's awesome. It's really strong. It's really strong.
Yeah, and I like this font too. That's a really good font.
I really like that font. I like the UB on this one and the font on that one.
Okay, the UB there,
Yeah, it's clearer.
and then the font there.
That UB on the blue one, the blue UB is not as distinctively UB to me. Like I can't, it's almost too stylized.
Yeah,
This one's a little bit tighter and I can clearly see UB.
right.
It's just a little bit tighter, but I like the font on the top one better.
Yeah, me too,
That
definitely.
one. Oh, this looks great.
Yeah, good job, Tony.
Oh, this is exciting.
I know we needed it. We definitely needed it. So,
Yeah, no, I agree because honestly, I kept seeing UBS and it was annoying me.
Yeah, I know. So I'm gonna send this out to everybody. I'm gonna ask. Maybe we should ask Tony to do this one with, or try to find a middle ground between these two UBs,
Yeah.
and then have him do this one with this sports centered.
Yeah, and I would just have him change the colors to be red, white, and blue like you had suggested.
What do you think about that red? I mean, the hardest thing is reds because reds are so different.
Again, we want to make sure that when we go with a red, everybody's going to use the same red and it's going to be replicated. So, I mean, I'm okay with it being a touch. I personally, and again, this is my whole thing is you got to get the blue right and then make sure the red matches the blue.
Right, exactly.
You
Like
got to
this
get the blue being like either a royal or a dark blue. And obviously I think we should mock it up in both ways and see which one we like.
Yeah.
The red kind of will match whatever one we go with on the blue. So I would almost lead with the blue and then see which red is better.
Yeah. See,
We
this
just
red.
want to make sure that it's easy for us to use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, this is awesome. Love it.
Sorry. Okay, good.
Can I ask you a quick personal question?
Of course. Wait, should I take off video?
What?
Should I take us off video?
Yeah, no, we don't need to unless you want.
Which is I'm gonna
Oh,
so.
oh, it's just a salary question. So hold on. Why don't we? Do you want me to just call you?
Hold on. Hey, where are you? Hey. Oh, yes, I'm still sharing. That's right. There you go. Hold on.